So I wanted to document an end-to-end process of us acquiring a new company. So yesterday, on Mother's Day, at around 7 a.m., I decided that we should really buy Support Guy. So we found it on Microns, but it was also listed on Acquire. That's common, where they'll have multiple listings on different sites. There was a competitive offer, and we had to bid against another Exo Capital like company, or I'm not sure exactly who the other potential buyer was, but we ended up having to pay more than we usually do in a competitive process for something like this. This is a sort of one-off example, and I don't have time to get into what the strategy or thesis is behind buying stuff that doesn't make any money yet, other than this will be the second time that we've done it where we buy something that does, well, the third time that we've done it where something we buy doesn't quite have really any revenue yet. And frankly, we've had mixed results. One, we ended up selling off a couple months after we bought it because it just wasn't a good fit for us. And another one is Cold DM, which we bought it. It was making like $200 a month, and now it makes over 2,000. So we've had kind of both outcomes: a successful one and a failed one. Although even the failed one, we were able to resell that product, and I think it's still running. I haven't checked in a while, but this is the new one. It's called Support Guy. This will be our entry point into some kind of GPT API enabled products. So this is pretty cool because you can upload a bunch of documents and then like documentation or help desk articles, and then people can just kind of chat with that. And I really like it. It's an AI kind of first product. It's a vertical use case. I mean, it's still quite a horizontal product, but it's more of a vertical use case than, let's say, some of the other thin wrappers around the GPT 3 or 4 API that we've seen. And almost every software product needs it. We're kind of kicking around with this idea. I don't quite know what to call it. In other industries, they call it vertically integrated, where let's say you are a pharmaceutical company and you don't just sell the drugs or brand the drugs, but you also make the drugs. You own the facilities that make the pills themselves. You own the facilities that bottle it, etc. You might not own shipping, but you get the point. You kind of own the stack end to end. Apple, for example, is a vertically integrated company, whereas let's say like Dell is not, right? Dell computers, they put their logo on it, but the parts are just kind of sourced from wherever. Whereas Apple makes their own chips even, right? Not necessarily that it's assembled in their facility, but like that's assembled elsewhere, but they make all of the really core kind of hard components. So we're thinking about that as one approach to a thesis for Exo Capital is for all of these tools that we need to buy to run our SaaS portfolio, other people probably need them to run even just a single SaaS company. So that's sort of the rough thinking around buying some of these tiny ones that don't even have revenue yet, but I think a lot of people will need them or need something like this. And then this one's a bonus because, again, it's our entry point into some GPT or large language model powered workflow. So how does this actually work? So I pinged this guy on Twitter. We can just go straight to Twitter. We had bought, and this one's kind of interesting, so it's a little bit of a one-off. We bought Cold DM from this guy. This is the first time that we've ever bought something twice from the same person. And, Cold DM, this is the one that we bought for $200. It was making $200. We didn't buy it for $200. It was making $200 a month when we bought it. And now it's making well over 2,000. We picked this up for relatively cheap. It was relatively well built. I mean, we have a bunch of features that we're adding and stuff like that. But what was really interesting is the first time you go and buy something from an unknown, there's almost like an unknown party, or in this case, a single developer. I think he's based in India. You know nothing about the person. You know nothing about the code base. You know nothing about like the type of transaction that this is going to be. We've had great experiences, and we've had awful experiences. So it's really difficult to tell what kind of an experience you're going to have when you go through a transaction like this. However, because we've gone through one before, and the last transition was totally fine, there was a lot of trust. So I just pinged him on Twitter. We kind of negotiated like the price and stuff, and that was it. Like, We had a deal in maybe 30, 45 minutes. During brunch at Mother's Day yesterday, I was like wiring money to him, and he started transferring the assets. I didn't even look at the code beforehand. We have a rough idea of what his code looks like already. He's working through a tech diligence doc now, and that was really it. So this is on the obviously on the simpler side, but this is the most up-to-date example of like an end-to-end transfer as it's happening. So Mother's Day was yesterday, today's Monday, and so he's basically just put all of the items that are being transferred into a worksheet here. There's nothing fancy. There's a username, a hidden password column, the site name, and the notes. We'll have to change all of these passwords and some of the usernames. But basically, this is how it happened. So he transferred the code to our GitHub. That was kind of the first thing. Transferred the domain to our account, and that's really it. I mean, for a small little transaction like this, there's not a ton to it. So I don't think you need to overthink like, oh, well, how are we going to transfer all these things and be really militant about it. I mean, I sent over the same asset purchase agreement we used for the Cold DM transaction, like literally the exact same one, swapped out Cold DM for support guy, and sent it over, and he signed it in 30 minutes. Like this whole deal, I think, took less than maybe an hour between when I first pinged him and said, hey, can we still figure out a way to make this work, and when we had wired the first payment. We did do half up front and then half after we got all the assets. So tomorrow or maybe today, the last pending item will be what I ask everyone to go through, which is a tech diligence doc. So I can share, I think I have shared this on the blog before, but there's an async tech diligence doc that I ask people to fill out via video, because oftentimes in the adverse buyer scenario or the adverse, I don't know, M&A transaction, this might be the last time I speak with this person. And so it's really important to get all of the information that I need from him before he disappears, right? Because that's happened before too, is that somebody doesn't actually give us all this information, and then I have no idea how to run the thing. I don't know how to deploy the thing into production, and it's a really big pain in the ass. So here's our async tech diligence doc. It's pretty straightforward. It's not anything crazy. Again, you can just kind of like, we ask that they create like a Loom video just like this and step through each of these questions and then show their work. And so this is sort of the basis for how we try and take over the application. To be honest, this is still a very big, this is very much a work in progress. I typically almost for so far, for every product that we've ever bought, I have personally taken down production on the first deploy every single time, because something always breaks, something always doesn't go right. And so having this document still doesn't necessarily prevent that, but we hope that by getting all of these answers up front, it can prevent specifically me from breaking production. A lot of times, that happens anyways, is like when you transfer the domain, something happens there and the production site goes down. Or a lot of times what will happen is like certain, you can set up a whole product. Like if you were going to sell it, you would set up everything separate, but you don't always know that you're going to sell the thing. And so sometimes accounts can't be just directly transferred where we take over the whole thing. And so like, oh, we need to redeploy like the Stripe keys, or, in this case, the OpenAI API key we'll have to redeploy. And so there's almost always some configuration changes that need to happen, and that's typically where things break, because everyone has their own sort of little special way that they handle secrets and passwords and all that stuff in a system. And so I generally get in there and I'm not very gentle about it, and I kind of just break stuff. I also like kind of just seeing like the way things break too. I mean, with something like this, I'm a little bit more of a cowboy. I mean, I generally approach things like a cowboy anyways. Like I'm pretty reckless with this stuff. But for these small ones, it just doesn't matter that much. Like there's, I think 1, maybe 2 paying customers for this. And so, if production's down for an hour on like a Tuesday, like it's just not a big deal. And so, if we were to buy something much, much larger, then I think a ton more precaution would need to take place. But Even still, generally speaking, if you just email everybody and say, hey, we have a maintenance window, and schedule that out, then I can sort of schedule out when I'm going to break production and work through it. And then I document that and give it to our 3 full-time engineers to kind of take from there, so they don't make the same mistakes that I do. So from here, really the next step for us is to go through all the assets, make sure we have absolutely everything we need, including that tech diligence video, at which point we'll send the final payment. At this point though, basically we have all the assets in our control. We feel comfortable. The guy that we bought it from, again, we've bought something from him before, so he's been awesome. But we're still in communication, right? All these things you kind of just want to check before you send that final payment, because it's almost like, in my experience, a contractor working on your house. The second you pay these guys and something breaks, like you're good, good luck hearing from them again. So we'll go through everything, make sure we have all of the passwords and whatnot. And then the next step will really be me still going through the code, making sure I understand kind of the architecture and what's going on, maybe some additional follow-up questions that may not be covered in the tech diligence doc. I might try to redeploy something myself. Again, given we know this guy and I kind of roughly know how he set things up last time, and this is roughly the same, it shouldn't be too painful on this one. But all in all, this process I think is 24, 48, maybe at most 72 hours from the time that we said, hey, we think we want to buy this, to when we had full control, we deployed something to production and it's like 100% ours. So that's sort of the end-to-end process for us on buying one of these really tiny SaaS applications.